In the early days of Nigeria's existence as an independent country, some persons dedicated themselves wholly to the development of the country from their respective domains. One of such persons was the man known as Dr. Michael Okpara. Okpara was the premier of the eastern region of Nigeria. At that time, Nigeria was divided into 3 regions and later divided into 4 regions. The 3 regions were Eastern Region, the Western Region, and the Northern Region, and the 4th region was the Midwestern Region. The heads of these regions were addressed as premiers, a position that was equivalent to today's governors. The Eastern Region then was made up of all the states in Igbo land and all the states in today's South-South region. Okpara was the man in charge of this vast area. He distinguished himself in leadership and made giant strides in development. In this edition of Back in History, we present the story of Dr. Michael Okpara, the last premier of the now defunct Eastern region of Nigeria. Welcome to this edition of Back in History. Dr. Michael Okpara was born on Christmas Day, 25th December 1920, in Umuegu, Okpara, Umuahia, in present-day Abia State. He attended the famous government college in Umuahia. He later went to Uzuakoli Methodist College, where he won a scholarship to study medicine at Yaba Higher College in Lagos. He successfully graduated as a medical doctor and was employed in Lagos as a government medical officer. He worked briefly in Lagos and moved back to the east to set up his private practice. He remained committed to his private practice and soon became the people's doctor. His profession provided him with a platform to understand the challenges faced by rural communities, which later influenced his political agenda. While in his private practice in the East, Okpara came face to face with the fundamental needs of the people and thus took the decision to be part of governance. He considered politics as a vehicle through which an individual can have an opportunity to positively affect the lives of many. He thus took interest in the Zik movement, which was a popular movement at the time. The movement was named after Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the founder of the NCNC, that is, the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons. Okpara made useful contributions to the movement and soon became well known to the people. In 1952, the British colonial government allowed for some measure of internal self-rule, which allowed Nigerian citizens to be elected to the legislature. Okpara showed interest in the legislature and embarked on rigorous campaigns and won a seat in the Eastern Nigeria House of Assembly. While in the legislature, he advocated fervently for the well-being of the people and the development of the region. As a cabinet member, Okpara served as Minister of Health and later served as Minister of Agriculture and Production. He oversaw the construction of several health centers and hospitals and the training of medical personnel while serving as Minister of Health. As Minister of Agriculture, he embarked on numerous agricultural programs ranging from crop production to animal husbandry. He is credited as being the person who introduced the idea of having cattle in one place to stop the perennial complaint of destruction of crops by wandering herds of cattle. He also wanted a place where other activities could be undertaken at the same time in addition to cattle rearing. This is how the idea of the Obudu Cattle Ranch in present-day Cross River State was brought to bear. Today, the ranch is still in existence and its history is not complete without the mention of the innovative contributions of Dr. Michael Okpara as cabinet member in charge of agriculture. Michael Okpara was a faithful follower of Nnamdi Azikiwe. He believed so much in the Zik movement and the policies of the movement, which included education, agriculture, and overall development for the greater benefit of the people. He admired Azikiwe as a progressive mind whose tenure as Premier of the Eastern region had brought development to the people. In 1960, Nigeria gained independence and most of the regional leaders and premiers moved to the center in Lagos to take leadership positions thereat. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe left the seat of Premier of the Eastern region and moved to the center in Lagos, where he took up the position of Governor General. He was the first African to occupy this office in the early days of independence in the continent. Incidentally, he was also the first and last indigenous Governor General of Nigeria. When Nigeria became a republic in 1963, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe became the first president of the country, with Tafawa Balewa as Prime Minister. Azikiwe's movement to the center in Lagos thus left a vacuum in the office of Premier of the Eastern Region. This is how Dr. Michael Okpara became the Premier of the Eastern Region. He served in this office till January 1966, when the first military coup was executed in Nigeria by a group of army majors led by Major Kaduna Nzeogu. The coup truncated the First Republic of Nigeria and dislodged the premiers. Out of the 4 premiers at the time, 2 were killed in the coup, namely Ladoke Akintola, Premier of the Western Region, and Samadu Bello, Premier of the Northern Region. Only 2 premiers escaped being killed, namely Dennis Osadebe, a lawyer and Premier of the Midwestern Region, and Dr. Michael Okpara, Premier of the Eastern Region. But before the truncation of their government, Okpara had distinguished himself in leadership to the admiration of many. His tenure was marked by a focus on agricultural development and education. Okpara introduced the Farm Settlement Scheme, which aimed to modernize agriculture by introducing mechanized farming. Young families were settled in organized farming communities to boost agricultural productivity and self-sufficiency. He promoted the cultivation of cash crops like oil palm, rubber, and cocoa, encouraging an export-oriented economy and improving incomes for farmers. The establishment of cooperative societies by him helped farmers access credit, farm inputs, and better market opportunities, strengthening the agricultural sector's economic base. He invested in building infrastructure, roads, and expanding access to education. His efforts significantly improved literacy rates and educational opportunities in the Eastern Region. Okpara championed industrialization, establishing enterprises and industries that contributed to the economic growth of the Eastern Region of Nigeria. The popular presidential hotel in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, was built by him. The hotel is still functional till today and remains one of the major hospitality centers in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. In the area of education, Okpara's administration was committed to expanding access to education. Policies were introduced to make primary education universally accessible, reflecting his belief in education as a cornerstone for development. Recognizing the need for skill-based education, he promoted technical and vocational schools to create a skilled workforce tailored to meet the demands of industrialization. Okpara's administration worked to improve educational infrastructure, constructing new school buildings and upgrading existing facilities. This initiative was meant to create a conducive learning environment for students and teachers. To encourage higher education, scholarships and incentives were introduced for students showing exceptional promises. These programs aimed to make higher education more attainable to students from various backgrounds, promoting inclusivity and diversity in education. In the area of the economy of the Eastern Region, Okpara focused on establishing industries to complement agricultural production. The creation of agro-based industries helped in processing raw materials locally, adding value and creating employment. In the area of infrastructure development, Okpara made huge investments to improve infrastructure, including roads and communication networks, facilitating better connectivity and supporting economic activities across the region. In the area of political stability and governance, Okpara's policies emphasized good governance and political stability, aiming to create an environment conducive to economic growth and social development. He worked on maintaining harmonious relations among diverse communities with the region. Dr. Michael Okpara's visionary policies laid a solid foundation for the modernization and economic progress of eastern Nigeria. His administration's focus on self-reliance and development continues to be celebrated as a model of effective regional governance in Nigeria's history. Dr. Michael Okpara's progressive political career was interrupted by the military coup of January 1966, which led to the suspension of regional governments. After the coup, Okpara retired from active politics, spending his later years away from the public eye. When the civil war broke out between Nigeria and Biafra, Okpara served as political advisor to the head of state of Biafra, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. When Ojukwu took the decision to leave Biafra and move to Ivory Coast, the only available aircraft to carry him was a cargo plane without seats. The hundreds of people who found themselves in the cargo plane either sat on their backs or had to stand throughout the journey. The plane had only 4 seats for passengers, and the seats were occupied by 4 persons, namely Ojukwu, his wife, Dr. Michael Okpara, and Mr. N.U. Akpan, Secretary of the Government of Biafra. Okpara was a highly regarded personality, even in the most inauspicious moments. Okpara later traveled to the Republic of Ireland, where he spent a number of years before finally returning to Nigeria, where he lived with his family till his death. He kept a low profile till his death. He died on December 17, 1984, leaving behind a legacy of progress and regional transformation. His funeral was attended by the creme de la creme of the Igbo society and of Nigeria at large. He left behind a wife, Adamma Enyidiya Okpara, and 6 children, namely Nnawihe Okpara, Uzodimma Okpara, Chinyere Okpara, Ogonna Okpara, and Ijeoma Okpara. Michael Okpara has been immortalized in many ways. The Michael Okpara Way in Abuja, Nigeria's seat of power, is named after him. A popular university in Abia State, the Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Umodike, is named after him. The popular Okpara School in Enugu is also named after him. The present-day Imo State Polytechnic was first known and called Michael Okpara College of Agriculture before it was renamed Imo State Polytechnic following the creation of Imo as a separate state. While alive, Michael Okpara received Nigeria's highest honor of Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, GCON, in 1964. This was conferred on him by Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, who was Nigeria's Prime Minister. The name Dr. Michael Okpara will be remembered in the history books of transformational leadership and development in Eastern Nigeria, Nigeria as a whole, and in the whole of Africa and beyond for many more years to come. Thanks for watching this edition of Back in History, even as I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and share our videos to friends and loved ones so that together we can have a larger community where we can sit together to learn from the rich historical narratives of the continent of Africa. I am your friend and host, Ekemini Udim.